You're listening to Beyond Wellness Radio, bringing you the cutting edge in health, biohacking, and sports performance. Stay up to date and listen anywhere and anytime on your computer, tablet, or smartphone by subscribing on iTunes. Catch your host, Dr. Justin Marchegiani, as he answers your burning health questions as well as interviews from world-renowned guest experts. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to beyondwellnessradio.com.
Hey there, it's Dr. Justin Marchegiani. Welcome to Beyond Wellness Radio. Feel free and head over to beyondwellnessradio.com where you can access our full podcast transcriptions. While you're there, you can also sign up for our thyroid and female hormone video series. This series goes into the root cause of why your hormones are out of balance. While you're there, you can also schedule a functional medicine consult with Dr. Justin, myself, where we'll dig deeper into the root cause of your health challenges. Feel free and think of sharing this podcast with at least one person. This podcast grows by people sharing it. Sharing is caring. If you can think of one person that can benefit from this information, please feel free and share it. If you're enjoying the podcast, make sure you subscribe on iTunes. You can also click below the video or podcast where you'll see the iTunes review button and leave us a review. You can also sign up for the newsletter at beyondwellnessradio.com where you'll get updates before anyone else. Thank you so much and enjoy the show. Evan Brand, how you doing this morning? It's Friday.
It is Friday. Hey, I'm great. We're in the trenches again on ourselves today, so this is fun.
Yeah, today's going to be a different kind of podcast. I think we are pushing the envelope regarding functional medicine and functional health, podcasting, as if we're doing tests on ourselves. So today we're going to be talking about some stool tests that came in for yourself. And we already talked about them earlier this week, and we're just excited to share them with the general public because we know your story and my story will be able to help hopefully tens of thousands of potential patients and people out there.
Absolutely. So to give a little of history here about why we suspected something was going on is when I first moved to Texas, I was about 160 pounds, and after moving there, I quickly began to lose weight without changing much of the diet. Paleo was pretty much my diet template. I was still exercising, but not as much, and I began to slowly lose weight, and I bottomed out at like 138 pounds. So we're talking about 22 pounds lost in about a year, maybe a year and some change. And when I remember the first time I came over to your house, you were like, dude, Evan, you got a parasite. That's not normal. Like, you're getting skinny, man. Like, your muscles disappearing. And I had just attributed it to adrenal fatigue because I ran a cortisol rhythm test on myself too and showed pretty low cortisol, even though I had good DHEA. And so that kind of made sense, but it wouldn't explain that significant weight loss. So you even said, over 6 months ago, you better run a test for a parasite and see what's going on. And so I finally got around to it. And turns out I popped up positive for Cryptosporidium and also Giardia, which are two different parasites that can be found or that you can get exposure to in different water sources. And so when I was talking to Dr. Kurt yesterday, he said, Evan, he goes, did you swim in any sources of water that were a little bit lower than normal, like a drought-stricken place? And I was like, oh my God, Lake Austin, Lake Travis, Martin Springs, Krause Springs, like everywhere I went in Austin on the weekend was some sort of water source that could have potentially exposed me to it. And so the light bulb really went off, and I'm glad that we found these things because now we're going to get into the treatment stuff.
Absolutely. And one of the interesting things about this infection as well, first off, I saw pictures of you in the past before I knew you, and you just looked bigger, more fuller in your facial structure. And then when I met you in person a year or two later, I asked you, I said, Evan, have you changed your diet at all recently? Because I know you're a big paleo guy, so I imagine you weren't eating much sugar or carbs back then. You go, no, I'm just losing weight. My diet's pretty much the same. And we did a diet review on you. I'm like, exactly what you said. I'm like, you got an infection. There's no way you're losing this kind of weight without some kind of internal malabsorption. And then we saw your fingernails too, and we saw these vertical ridging, and more like, I'm just said, this is some kind of protein or fat malnutrition. I know you kind of sat on it. And then over time, you were telling me some of the, your cold hands, cold feet. You have it every now and then. You mentioned you'd have some kind of like blood sugar or panic attack swing that we were connecting to some adrenal stress. And then we're saying, well, how is this adrenal stress happening? Because you're doing so many good things right. And then we finally got this testing done, and we were able to quantify that this is more than likely the driving factor. And any one of these infections by themselves is a pretty big deal. Whether it's Giardia or crypto by themselves, you have them together. So it's like, with all these forces combining, it's really an exponential issue. It's going to be far worse than having just one at a time.
A double whammy. Yeah. And so I had a slide here that was from the Institute of Functional Medicine's intestinal permeability lecture, and it was saying a recent study revealed 23.5% of clinical samples tested positive for at least one parasite. So just go ahead and round that up to 25% of people that were getting tested had at least one parasite. And so we're talking 1 in 4, basically. For me, it seems to be 1 in 3. And Blastocystis hominis was the number one at 12.5%. And then you had Dentamoeba fragilis, and then you had Entamoeba, and then you had blah, blah, blah. And then Giardia is at the bottom, 0.7%. So apparently Giardia is pretty rare to even show up or to even have. So for me to have that and the crypto, you and I and Dr. Kurt too was also like, wow, this is rare to have. And Kalish, same thing. I've looked up a couple of his lectures, and he said he had only seen it like once before of having the double whammy.
Yeah, and here's the real important thing too is, well, most conventional laboratories, especially in a hospital setting, aren't going to pick up the infection. Again, I think you sent it to me, and we did a 401H on you where it came up, and I don't think it came up in every single sample because there's 4 or 5 samples on that 401H test by BioHealth. We'll give them a plug because they're a really good lab testing company. How many samples are you aware of that it came up on?
I'm not aware of the number, but it was 5 or 6 samples over a 3-day period. So if we missed it on day 1, which if you're doing the conventional stool test, actually I had a female client last week that she actually had some really weird type of stools, and so she ended up going to the hospital and getting a stool test there, showed up negative for everything. So I'm waiting on her results for the same test that I ran on myself. I'll be so thrilled if we find something just to prove that those conventional ones fail once again.
And I'm finding even BioHealth, I'm teaming up with some other labs that are doing the PCR DNA stool testing because it's about 2,000 to 3,000 times more sensitive. Now, sometimes BioHealth will pick certain things up that other labs don't. So I'm going to be really curious to get your DNA testing back either from DRG or GI map because I think we'll find maybe even something else there as well. And here's the real important take home is you didn't have a lot of the major conventional symptoms for Giardia. So like a lot of the conventional symptoms for Giardia are going to be like lots of diarrhea, lots of gas, lots of bloating, right? You didn't have a lot of those major symptoms. We did see, the malabsorption. I saw that more on the outside. But again, a typical individual won't make that connection because they're not looking at your diet and how good it is. They're not going to be able to appreciate a conventional physician won't be able to appreciate a paleo diet, especially the massive changes in weight you have. So I was able to notice that, but you didn't have a lot of those conventional Giardia symptoms. And that's why I just think it's so important where if you have any health issues that you can't quite put your finger on and you're going to a conventional doctor to think that they're going to be able to pick this up, a lot of times they're not because most people, you didn't have violent diarrhea, you didn't have massive abdominal cramping, you didn't have excessive gas or upset stomach or massive nausea, right?
No, not really. I mean,
not really.
That one day of food poisoning or whatever that was, we talked about on a previous episode, but that was the only real episode where I thought, wow, something was up with my gut. And so it's crazy. I did want to read, which I kind of alluded to already, where you could pick this up. But, the Mayo Clinic, they write about how people become infected with Giardia, and that's after swallowing contaminated water. They could, where the Giardia parasite is found in lakes, ponds, rivers, streams, municipal water supplies, cisterns, swimming pools, water parks, and spas. And so I almost thought about we should title this episode like the downsides of being primal or something, because I go barefoot a lot of the time, which I read that you can get exposed to some of these parasites via soil. And maybe I'm not soaping myself enough. I will use some Dr. Bronner's organic soap, on the important areas, and maybe sometimes I wasn't cleaning myself enough, and I was taking it too far with the whole dirt is good for you, going barefoot, putting my hands in the dirt and the mud in the backyard all the time. I could have picked something up that way too.
Absolutely. And the big issue too is with these different infections, they can be spread fecal oral, but Giardia and crypto can also be spread via water. So I do a lot of water skiing in Lake Austin every week. So I'm going to make sure I'm tested, a couple times a year, because you're going to get these infections two kinds of ways. You're going to get it, number one, where you're chronically stressed, whether it's physical, chemical, emotional stress accumulating. And the chemical could be food allergens, gluten. It could be blood sugar swings, skipping meals, not eating nutrient dense foods. It could be toxicity issues. It could be a whole bunch of things, low stomach acid and enzymes. And then that chronic stressor opens you up. So when you get exposed to something, it's able to set up shop and create basically a niche in your gut and start to proliferate more cysts and more spores of their offspring. And that's kind of like one where the chronically ill person gets exposure. And then there's people like you that are they're healthier, but they just get exposed to a large bolus of it over a period of time, maybe just all at once, or maybe at multiple times throughout the week, like you mentioned. Like, your symptoms are perfect, right? It's a perfect script for it. And then boom, now it sets up shop, and then you've been gone from Austin for over a year, and you're not quite doing that same type of thing you were in Austin. But look, you got two infections now. So more than likely the water issue was a big driving factor. And I'm going to get myself tested, like we talked about, again, as I do yearly, with a couple different tests all at once. And we'll do a podcast analyzing my test results soon as well.
Yeah, so looking back on what I think was definitely some of the factors that led me to this, I mean, I was still working at the supplement company directly for the CEO, super
Right.
high position, super high stress position. And then I was also running my clinic on the side at the time. And this is when you and I were we got to hang out locally. And I was just seeing clients, outside of my basically 8 to 5 hours during the workday at the office, and then coming home and spending more hours looking at research, looking at labs, talking with people. That low adrenal function, I had to burn myself through. I had to burn through stage one. I probably had high cortisol, gave some leaky gut condition, maybe made myself more susceptible to all this stuff, made the perfect storm of stressors and maybe even lack of sleep from the stress that set me up. Now, luckily, which it's kind of crazy actually, even though I still tested positive for these two parasites, I was still able to I've put on about 6 pounds since I've moved back. I've got back in the gym. My strength's coming back. My injury where I thought I had a hernia is healed. And so it's amazing to see the progress that I've already made just by reducing the stress and being able to have more social interaction, being back in a place that I call home that makes me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what happens once we get these things knocked out, how my progress, especially with my strength and my weight coming back, will be.
Absolutely. And also, there are over 40 different kinds of Giardia. The main one that we get exposure to as humans is Giardia lamblia. And that's the so-called beaver fever that you can get exposed to in the water. It can also be spread fecal orally. So at some point, we'll have to get your wife tested as well and make sure she's treated, because we want to make sure that vector isn't being passed back and forth as well.
Yeah, I looked at her fingernails. She's got some vertical ridges too, but you and I talked about off air, even if we were to get a positive result on her with the baby growing in her tummy, we can't treat her right now anyway. So we'll just have to wait until after the baby's coming and look at it then.
Absolutely. And also, a big vector for Giardia, I'm going to say it now because it just happened last month with a patient, is going to be your pets, especially dogs, because dogs love to lick. And there's, a big article over at petsandparasites.org, right? Dog owners and Giardia, that's a big one. But I had a patient come in, and we had diagnosed her with Giardia the month before. The next month she came in and said, by the way, my dog was having some issues. We brought him to the vet, and the vet said he had Giardia. And she kind of felt bad because she thought maybe that she gave the dog Giardia. And I said, other way around, he vectored that Giardia to you. So for all these pet owners out there, be very careful of playing kissy face with your dogs. Because they're licking something else, if you know what I mean, and they're going over and licking you and licking your face or licking your hands. So if they're licking your face, that's a no-no. And if they're licking your hands, make sure you wash it off, because they can vector these parasites. And I've seen many people that have worked with pets and with dogs and with animals, trainers, veterinarians, and they almost always come back with Giardia and multiple other infections.
I wouldn't doubt if I got it from our Shih Tzu, because if I'm playing with her and she's slobbering all over the toy, I may not go and wash my hands right after I play with the toy, and then I could touch my face and maybe even touch my mouth by accident.
Yes.
So who knows? Lucy, our Shih Tzu, she may have a Giardia as well.
Yeah, it's very possible. I would say, we could get her tested, but a lot of times the conventional vet test don't work. They aren't awesome, but it's worth a try. Or you can just do a human-based test and see what happens on that. But number two, it may even be worth just treating your dog with the conventional antibiotics for that infection. So for the Giardia, that would be like Flagyl or metronidazole. Again, I typically don't recommend the antibiotics for most people. You can do it. Some people will do it, like the Flagyl or the metronidazole or the Alinea are like the go-to antibiotics for the infections. I like the herbs better just because of the fact that the side effects with the antibiotics can be very, very severe. And a lot of times you get the better exposure with the herbs over a longer period of time because with the Giardia and other infections, the Giardia may be there, but there may be a massive imbalance of other bad stuff, and the herbs can kind of help knock that back down without all the side effects. If someone wants to go the antibiotic route, then we'll typically do antibiotics and then follow up with herbs as well. The only issue with dogs, it just depends. If you can do herbs with your pet, that's great. A lot of times it's difficult to do that, especially every single day. It's easier just to do it with an antibiotic, knock down the vector and then come in with some good probiotics afterwards. But again, herbs for humans are going to be my number one go-to with that. And I've knocked out hundreds in the past.
Yeah, so let's talk about the protocol that we're going to start with, because antibiotics are the conventional option, the go-to thing for these type of infections. But you and I talked about it, and we're like, let's go herbal route. So we don't have to go specifically over every single ingredient, but wormwood and some of these other natural anti-parasitic, antimicrobials, oil of oregano, and then a few other supplements is going to be the treatment protocol that I'm going to be starting on. Everything's ordered. I should have everything to my door in a few days, and I'm going to get started ASAP. And then for the timeline,
I just want to touch upon just one thing real quick.
Yeah.
We didn't quite highlight crypto yet, but crypto is another waterborne parasite, but it can also be, fecal oral spread, meaning some type of fecal material from either whether it's intercourse or whether it's from poor preparations or not cleaning hands. That's another vector these things can be spread by. But crypto is that other major parasite. And again, like in the mid 90s, I think it was Milwaukee, they had a major outbreak in the water supply where I think 500,000 people were infected with crypto. I think even 4 died.
Yeah.
So crypto is another big one. We've been giving Giardia a lot of love here. But crypto is another one that can basically hides in the crypts of lubricants in the intestinal tract, in between the microvilli, burrowed deep down into the intestinal wall. And that's another infection that we're dealing with here that typically we have to kind of separate how we treat both of them, because Giardia can move and get into the bile ducts and affect fat digestion, and crypto can bury deep into the intestinal tract and in between those crypts where the microvilli are close by. So different infections, a lot of times we'll call for different treatments, and both can be spread via water, fecal, oral, and a lot of the side effects and symptoms may be the same. And again, immunocompromised people tend to have that, like a lot of your AIDS patients and such, but you're not in that camp, and you may have just been stressed and got exposed to it. So it's not just the super immunocompromised that the conventional medicine people say. It could be someone like Evan who is super healthy and productive and has a lot of energy too.
Yeah, it's amazing how much I've got done. You and I were kind of laughing, like how productive I've been despite having these two type of infections simultaneously. So I can't wait to see what happens as we kind of work through this protocol, which the timeline that you and I've kind of discussed is about 2 months that we're hoping we can knock these things out and retest and see what happens. And then something on hand that I have for die-off, just some activated charcoal. I ordered some of that just in case, and then I'll be using a probiotic at night too, just to try to help out with inflammation. And then obviously I'm going to stick with the probiotic too once I'm done through this protocol, and try to just focus a little bit more on gut healing and try to repair any type of damage that's been done.
Exactly. And even with Cryptosporidium, it's known that Cryptosporidium causes zinc issues, zinc malabsorption. Well, let's think about that, right? If we have low zinc, we need zinc to make hydrochloric acid. We need zinc to make especially testosterone, our hormones. It's a really important building block for hormonal health. So if we have that, if we have low stomach acid now because we have now low zinc, we need zinc for our immune system, right? The zinc fingers are a really important epigenetic factor for our DNA. And then we need stomach acid, we need our sex hormones. So you can see what happens here when you get an infection, the sequelae of how you tend to get sicker or symptoms get worse over time because malabsorption, lack of ability to break down food, low nutrients, compromised immune system, compromised sex hormones, compromised ability to make more digestive secretions to break things down. Different infections can hide in the bile ducts like Giardia and then create inability to shoot out bile. So now we have an inability to break down fat-soluble nutrients. Well, there goes vitamin A, D, E, K, all your EPA, DHA fats, cholesterol. And now we have this kind of bottleneck, and then we miss all of these building blocks to make our hormones and be really healthy.
Yeah, and I would like to add one other thing to it too. We ran in organics and looked over that. We were just talking about that together too, which showed high arabinose, therefore meaning that I have some candida issues going on top of all of this. So kind of a triple whammy. And it's funny because I haven't felt that bad. And now thinking back a little bit though, when I went, I guess this was a couple years ago, when I was kind of geeking out on the whole pylorrhea topic,
Yes.
and I ran the cryptopyrrole test, which showed very, very high issues where I was going to be lacking in the zinc and the B6.
Ah, see?
Yeah, so I'm wondering if it were what chicken or egg here. Was it the cryptopyrrole issue first, or was it the infection that led to the problems with the zinc, which elevated the pyrroles?
Right.
I mean, what do you think? That's a hard thing to try to figure out.
Well, again, I'm partial to these infections causing a whole host of issues.
Yeah.
And the big thing I want to hammer home here is you didn't have a lot of the conventional symptoms. So anyone that's listening to this and think, well, I don't have the main conventional symptoms, my conventional doctor said it couldn't be this. Think again. Evan is a perfect example right now, and Evan's a super healthy guy. And look what's happening here. We saw symptoms in and around different areas, and because of the fact that I know you mentioned like maybe some anxiety at times, it's very possible because of the protein stuff. We looked on your organics. We'll do a separate podcast on this. We saw some lower neurotransmitters, I think in the dopamine and catecholamine side of the fence, and we need hydrochloric acid and we need healthy digestion to break down protein to convert those proteins to your brain chemicals. So it's very possible this was driving some of the underlying, slight anxiety under the surface as well.
Yeah, and I've told you this, and I've told the listeners probably a dozen times. I'm not an anxious person by
Right.
nature. And so that was really odd for me to have some of these feelings of panic and anxiety overwhelming me, where I literally had to leave the movie theater one time
Right.
because I was having a panic episode. And I tell people this all the time. It's not you necessarily. Like, it's not you as a person that's anxious. It's your biochemistry. It's your neurotransmitters. It's the imbalance. It's the overgrowth of bad guys in the gut. These are creating a toxic situation where it doesn't matter who you are as a person, you can get overwhelmed. And that's what happened to me, is that sort of the good guy versus bad guy, the light versus dark, the dark started to win on me a little bit. So
Yeah.
really looking forward to get going with this thing. And I can't wait to see what you have. I mean, because you're in the water probably more now than I was. So
It's true.
I can't wait to see what's up.
I know. I'll be really curious. Healthier IgA, healthier hydrochloric acid can help because it's like a disinfectant. You got a dirty table, the hydrochloric acid and or IgA can come in there and clean that table off. In my real world analogy, that's like using bleach, right? You're pulling the bleach out, or using your seventh generation natural cleaner. For everyone here that's more naturally oriented, we'll use that stuff, get it clean, and then boom, you got a nice table that you can eat off of. That's kind of like your intestinal tract. We have IgA and hydrochloric acid that can basically pinch hit for that bleach in our real world analogy.
Right. So just to finish off, I'm sure
Yeah.
people are curious. A couple other pieces to the puzzle that I'm still keeping support nutritionally. Obviously, keeping the diet dialed in, keeping the sleep dialed in. I can't imagine if someone didn't have all the things that I have dialed in, how awful they would feel to have two infections at the same
Oh my
time.
God.
And so I really think, and you'd probably agree, that this is the only way that I've been able to stay so productive, is having the lifestyle and the nutrition and the stress and the adrenals and all that in check, because otherwise I'd probably be a wreck. I don't know. I don't even want to know, really.
Right.
But I'm doing the fish oil. I'm doing high potency. I'm trying to get at least a gram per day, and then also doing some enzymes, doing some HCl, a little bit of ox bile, because thinking back, and I don't think I mentioned this to you before, when I first tried to start using MCT oil, I was in such severe pain. I was rolling on the floor, grabbing
Wow.
my stomach from literally 1 teaspoon of MCT. And so this infection is making me, this makes me think that I was unable to digest fats because my gallbladder was impaired, like you were mentioning. So this is it's kind of crazy now that I'm gathering all of these pieces that I didn't think anything of when they happened in such isolated fashion.
Yeah. Well, I know you only got a few more minutes left here, Evan. Let's just go into treatment real quick. I already alluded with the Giardia, the conventional is going to be your flagyl or metronidazole, your typical conventional. Some of the more functional medicine MDs or even people like myself sometimes will use an antibiotic called Alinea, and we'll use that as well. But you got to be careful. There can be a lot of side effects. And I've seen many people already gone through antibiotics and still have the infection. I've seen it dozens and dozens and dozens of times just this week. So the moral of that story is don't think because you get the antibiotics that it's a slam dunk and it's gone. Just don't have that assumption. And if you do the antibiotic route, you still want to follow up with the herbs anyway, because there's a whole bunch of gastrointestinal imbalance that's going to be there and you want to clean everything up.
Yeah. So to be clear, we have both kind of talked about this, and we're not going antibiotic route. Yes, technically we're doing some natural antiparasitic, natural antimicrobials, but not the conventional antibiotics. And we're going to be doing this for about 2 months, and then we're going to retest and see what happens after we use some of these remedies and see what type of results we get. And then hopefully when we retest, we'll see that it's gone and we've wiped it out successfully, and that'll be another one for the books.
Yeah, we'll just kind of list off a couple of things that we're doing, but we're doing higher dose oil of oregano, higher dose wormwood, higher dose berberines and black walnut and grapefruit seed extract. We're going to be adding in neem. We're going to be adding in bitter melon, barberry, and other different families of berberines. We may even talk about adding in some silver. And then there's a couple other herbal blends that we'll do because we have to open up the crypts so we can get good exposure to these antimicrobials for the Cryptosporidium. So we're kind of doing 2 infections at the same time, which is harder, but I know you're healthy enough to handle it. But these are a whole bunch of families of herbs we're using, and you got to be careful too, because higher doses of wormwood can be very effective, but they can also raise liver enzymes. So we may have to add in binding support and liver support. So you really want to make sure you're working with someone that has experience. So 1, you make sure you get a therapeutic dose, and 2, you have the die-off binder support. So if you start having too much of these biotoxins from these infections accumulating, you can have support there, and maybe even have someone monitor your liver enzymes if needed as well.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously we're a little bit biased here, but without a doubt, for your health and for your overall wellness, even if you don't have any symptoms at all, which my only symptoms were really the nails and the cold hands and the cold feet, get tested. Reach out to one of us, get tested, run yourself through just for general wellness. You don't have to be one of those people that waits until you get sick, or waits until you have 30 symptoms and you're on 5 pharmaceuticals and then you get tested. Take the proactive approach like we've done. I could have been just fine. I could have just said, well, it's wintertime, it's 20 degrees outside. I have cold hands and feet, no big deal. I lost some weight, whatever. It was stress. And I could have just ignored this stuff. But just trying to be a little bit more proactive can really save your health and really save you from, not to bring up the big C word, but from cancer and other chronic illnesses that could happen. What if I were to keep this infection for 20 or 30 years and then finally get discovered? Oh my Lord.
My God. And the big thing too is, I think one other thing we'll add in, we'll put links so people want to get access to some of the stool testing, they can at least click below, but you want to make sure you get interpretation, either someone like myself or Evan, or a good functional medicine doctor that's trained in what the next steps are. Because the big thing that you're doing here that we haven't emphasized, you mentioned it briefly, is you're doing all the diet and lifestyle and adrenal stuff, and we're even getting you on some brain stuff as well, which is, going to help you go through this whole protocol without the side effects and keep you functioning at an optimal level so you can help, all the patients that you're helping.
Right. And luckily I have a little bit more of a relaxed lifestyle where I'm at home. So if I need to take it easy on myself and block out some more time, that I'll be able to do that. But the goal is to maintain productivity. And a lot of people, they don't have time to be sick and be laid out. So we're trying to craft this protocol here to where I'm still being able to be in hustle mode and still work through this thing. So excited to get going, and I'm really happy that we could share this with you all today.
I am too. And this is such a clinically relevant podcast. So please refer to all of your potential, candidates or friends or family, anyone listening that could resonate with this, please share it out there because it's so clinical. And I think people that hear it and resonate are going to actually be able to take direct action from this podcast. And that may help bring some closure to some of the underlying chronic symptoms that may be there.
Absolutely. And just to hit that drum a little bit harder one more time, this is not a theory podcast where our goal, which I did this for over 100 episodes successfully. We've hit 4 million downloads on iTunes, et cetera. What I started with Not Just Paleo podcast was very successful and very enjoyable, but it hit a certain point, and especially, in our careers where we're realizing, look, we don't have to have some random new name on the podcast every single week, because what we have going with our clinics and what we're actually doing in the trenches, to me, is becoming more important than having some new voice or new perspective on every week. So I'm glad that you guys, we're still seeing the numbers of the downloads go up significantly when Dr. J and I are doing these episodes together. So thanks for your support, and thanks for really digging deep with us and not just looking for the next piece of brain candy. We're actually sharing the things that may get a little bit repetitive, but every single person is different. And for this type of scenario, for me, the practitioner, to have 2 parasites myself, it's like, wow, this stuff can happen to anyone. So
absolutely. And then, Evan, do I have your permission to post up your lab work for this test online so people can actually see that this is the real deal?
Yeah, of course.
That's great. Oh, and I know we're both running late. We both have patience because we're in the trenches. We're doing it. We're rolling up our sleeves, trying to help people get their health back. So, Evan, thanks for this awesome show. Super inspired today with your story, and I know that we're just going to help so many more.
Yeah, well, take care.
Thanks, Evan. You too.
Bye.
Got a question for Dr. J? Go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com and click the questions button. Then tune in to hear the answer. Also, if you like the show, click below to review us on iTunes. For more Beyond Wellness Radio, go to BeyondWellnessRadio.com.